pattern, you don't have to work as hard, because just your presence there and your paraphrasing and your attention and your warmth is going to be enough of an antidote. In reevaluation co-counseling, they call it a contradiction. I like to call it a counteraction. But it's basically an antidote to the distress. So the key to active counseling is you study the distress pattern to understand how it's structured, and then you design an antidote. Because what'll happen is, if you can get a counteraction that is enough different from the way the distress was in the past, it'll jiggle the distress pattern. The distress pattern is just a tape loop, right? It's just a tape loop. Okay, I do this and then people say that. And it's just this recording that's rigid and always the same. And so if something's happening that's different, it's like, whoa, this does not compute. And it starts to jiggle it and wiggle it, and the energy starts to release out of it, which is the discharging. And that's what we're after, is releasing the energy out of those stuck tape loops. So this is like the sort of overall framework behind all prompts, active directions that we do in counseling.
It's about keeping it balanced, is what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Keeping the energy balanced so that they feel safe in the moment but are able to access wherever.
Right. Mm-hmm. They have to have enough attention on both things. And when you get a balance, they will discharge. They always discharge.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you know you've got a balance. Is discharge happens. It's spontaneously.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying. You can't make it happen, but you can get the balance right, and then it just spontaneously happens. And it's pretty amazing to watch, actually. And sometimes you have to try a lot of different things before you find enough of a counteraction that is really working well, and before the discharge happens. So we talked about, so you often have to direct attention toward distress for a latent pattern, right? One that's you're not triggered in all the time. In chronic patterns, you want to direct attention toward it enough to study it and figure it out, but then you really need to direct attention away from the distress, which means you want to find a counteraction as soon as possible and start working with it. You want to find something that's moving in the direction of positivity. You want to find something that's basically affirming reality, because the distress patterns are telling you lies, basically, like you're a miserable worm that doesn't deserve to live. No one will love you, things like that. It's not true. But the person in the grip of the distress pattern believes it. Mm-hmm. So you're moving them towards truth. You're moving them towards what's really real. And that's called attention away from distress. Mm-hmm. And from now on, we're going to be studying how to do that and different ways to do that. There's many different ways to do it. I'm going to send you an article after the class that has a list of all of the main ways that we use, the basic, most useful ways to do it. So basically that handout we're going to be studying at the rest of the class and examining different ones more deeply. So there's a lot in it. With any kind of distress, you can always counsel away from the distress. And it's a useful thing to do. It's more fun to counsel away from the distress, but you still get good discharge, usually. And when we do things like say new and goods for the whole session, we're counseling away from the distress. But we're laughing, and we're being animated talking, right? We're still discharging, and actually sometimes it brings up really intense sorrow to try to keep saying all the good things that happen in your life. One of the most powerful attention away from distress directions is complete self-appreciation. So you just start saying things you appreciate about yourself with no reservation. You attempt to do it with no reservation. I am a completely wonderful human being. I am so lovable and powerful. You start trying to say these kinds of things, which will be difficult for almost everyone. And they'll probably immediately start laughing. Oh, I don't believe that. You know, whatever. And it'll kind of flush out the distress patterns, the chronic patterns. So it's almost like you use a positive attention away from distress direction, making positive statements or affirmations, and then you kind of wait for the kickback. Because there'll be part of you going, nah, this is bullshit. And then you go, okay, why is it bullshit? And you can kind of, it's almost like it flushes all the little patterns out and they all pop their heads up and go, no, that's not right. And you can go, aha, there you are. I gotcha. Okay, so why do you think it's bullshit? And then you can follow that down, into the root of the distress, like, oh, where did that belief come from? And you can tailor it more specifically. But if you don't think you have anything to work on, that's a great way to start a session. You just start saying unconditional positive statements about yourself. You'll have something really fast that way. The other thing you want to remember about being a counselor is if you're going to suggest an active direction, like we're talking about, ask permission. Say, I have an idea for a direction. Would you like to try this? And then the client can say yes or no. It's kind of good to try what your counselor is thinking about, just as an experiment. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but they might actually have some perspective you don't have on your patterns. So give it a try once or twice, Or you might think of something else like, no, not exactly that, but I want to do this. And you can also feed your client direction, your counselor directions. You can tell them what you want to try doing. Also, you gotta follow your intuition this is all like an art form, and there's no one way to do it right. There's actually usually many ways that would work. And so you just keep experimenting until you find something that works. You have to be kind of non-attached to your efforts, because you might try 6 or 7 things and nothing really works, and then you hit one that's like, wow, that was great. And if you become a skillful counselor, you're going through things really quickly. They don't even really notice. And it happens pretty fast. And so getting through your fear of making a mistake is important. And also some fears of like, oh, I can't mess with them. Messing with other people's energy and moving them around. You have to kind of get over some of that too. It's good to be able to be assertive as a counselor and as a client.